Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. With over 1,000 NCAA commitments, the EHL is the proven path to college. Turn it up and learn more about the college placement leader at the Division II and III levels.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, "We take care of our own," as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. Once again, my name is Neil Ravin. This is episode number 33 of the E-Show, and the team of the week this week, it's the Connecticut RoughRiders. So let's start by welcoming in the head coach and the GM, Eric Lind. Welcome to the E-Show, Eric.
Neil, thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
And coming on for the first time on the E-Show, the associate head coach of the RoughRiders. Welcome to the E-Show, Stephen Brown.
Thanks, Neil. Excited to start the EHL season coming up.
And about that season coming up, the 8th year of the EHL, and we'll get to this later in the podcast, but you're one of the teams that's been around since the beginning. So I'll let either one of you take this one. How do we feel heading into year 8 compared to the previous seasons?
I'll start off. This is Eric here. I feel very excited. Definitely going to be different landscape here with COVID. So I feel actually the growth over the 8 years, between myself and Brownie, is going to play a huge factor here with just the culture we're going to set and, getting kids used to a different setting. So I'm looking forward to it.
And for you, Brownie, looking back on the previous years, you guys obviously, as I mentioned, have been in the league since the league was formed back in 2013. How do you look at this year's roster and compare it to the previous seasons?
Well, last year we were a little heavy in age-out players. And this year we're sort of returning to our more balanced lineup where we'll have an equal amount of 2000s, 01s, and 02s. And trying to keep within our developmental model of making sure players are prepared for the next step.
And in terms of the recruiting, I know that you guys do it a little bit differently than other programs do. So, Brownie, I'll let you start with this one. How do you guys split it up each off season?
Well, obviously when the next season begins, that's when you're starting the recruiting process. And then to sort of add on to that, there's players that you've been looking at for many years before that, coming out of AAA programs or even in Europe. So we keep a tab on players. But once the season starts and that player is slated to play in juniors the next season, then we begin to monitor them, watching them online. I mean, much different now than 8-9 years ago when there was no hockey TV. So it allows us to be in a lot of places at once, trying to get to some live games during the year, and then starting conversations with players via FaceTime, which is the best way to do things nowadays. And seeing if we get them on for a skate at any point during the season or coming out for a private skate and seeing how they're doing on the skills-wise front. So, like I said, starting early on the process. And our objective is, if we can, is to try to get our players that we're looking at earlier before showcases start, because we would rather see players play in season than in a showcase scenario ultimately. I mean, sometimes you don't have, or you're not fortunate to be able to do that all the time. But if we can get players that are interested and that fit our mold, both on skill set and character, which is a big thing for us, we'd like to get them in earlier to the program.
And Eric, I'll let you go off of that. It seems like, from my league perspective, I don't want to use the word 50-50 split, but you guys handle the recruiting together. It's not one person really more than the other. Is that fair?
I mean, Brownie handles, I would say, the majority of the recruiting. I help him out. But we also have a good foundation of local players. So players that, either myself or Brownie had in private lessons or I had at the youth level. So I'd say some of our top players we've known since, 7, 8, 9 years old. So that gives us the advantage. And also, even if players that we've known for a long time decide to go to another league, a lot of those players end up coming back to us, which, you know, we have a good relationship. So I think like I said, like half our roster we've known for a long time, and then the other half, obviously out of state and stuff, that Brownie keeps a very good relationship with.
Gotcha. So off of that, you know, the reason I brought it up is I mentioned right at the beginning that the title for you, Steven, is associate head coach. Now for you, Eric, what I noticed with a lot of our teams is you got the guy who's the head coach and the GM who's doing so much of the work. And obviously you have some ownership also, but then a lot of these programs just have assistant coaches who, not to knock them, but show up for practices in games and take off, you know, when they don't have to be there. For you guys, you really work full-time together. To have an assistant who I said is not really your assistant, he's the associate head coach, to have a guy like Brownie with you who's full-time like that, how does it make your job easier?
I mean, obviously we were working so long together, but we feed off each other, and it makes my life a lot easier. And it honestly, it makes the players get that much more experience when there's two guys hands on, and we also have a goalie coach, Craig Height, that works with Sacred Heart, that's also very much involved, and then we also have another assistant that helps us with off ice and stuff. So we have a nice crew, and the facility Sono helps us out a lot too. They have a staff that is very involved. So we try to make this experience, you know, the best for the player, and that leads into their development on the ice and off the ice.
And that's I'm segueing here into I don't know if you guys realize this, but obviously the junior hockey landscape has changed a lot over the years, and this upcoming season the EHL will not feature the Junior Flyers or the Revolution. And Brownie, I'm not sure if you probably have an idea of this already, but you're now basically, I guess we can call it, an original six team in the EHL. I'll kind of quiz you. Do you know who the other five teams are?
Oh, we went over this point. It's Rangers. Yes. Yep. Oh, I don't have the list in front of me of all the teams on top of my. Oh God. Valley.
Yep, you got three of them right there. Rangers, yourself, and Valley. Three more.
Oh, now I'm getting up to look at the map here.
Applecore,
Walpole, and the Little Flyers. And what's really interesting when you look at that original six, Applecore, a few different head coaches over the years. Warriors had Andy Hines for all those years. Now their head coach is Ryan McGrath. Rich DiCaprio took over for Mario Martiniello towards the beginning of the EHL, and Little Flyers, obviously, three different head coaches since the league was formed. So of the original six teams, Brownie, you're the only coaching duo that's been together the entire time. So you're technically the longest coaching or tenured coaching duo in the EHL. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's like Eric said, we have an unbelievable synergy. It's sometimes it's a yin yang, but we definitely, like Eric said, we totally feed off of each other because we complement each other really well. And if I sort of go back to the beginning, when I started with Eric, I had taken a year off, year away from the bench. I was working with the Quebec Pee Wee team out of Wilkes-Barre because I was a little burnt out for coaching for 30 years, and I just needed a break. And they had opened Sono at the rink, and I had met Eric, and they called me in, and I helped them the first year out, just doing video. But that was when we were in the EJ, and then came on board and just as an assistant, and just really liked what Eric was teaching from his skill set, and obviously he's one of the best skating instructors probably in the world, definitely in the United States, in the tops there for sure. And he was looking at the game from the skill set and the development aspect, and me coming out of pro and college, looking at the game differently, more in a tactical. And so the more I worked with Eric, and it took years for me to really understand sort of his philosophy and his styling, it was a great place to be, and that's why I haven't moved since then. It's not so much as going and finding a team for myself. It's just happy with the environment that I'm in and really enjoying to come to the rink every day and seeing how we can develop and move those players. And that's the nice thing about juniors. Before coming to RoughRiders, I only coached juniors for 1 year at AIK Stockholm back in 1987. But it was my favorite age group, even more favorite than professional guys. So once I started working more and more, and then we started getting players onto university and seeing how they performed at university, that for me, and being 56 coming up in November, it's very rewarding to be in a junior environment.
And we'll stick with you for this next one, because obviously it's been a few years now since the name changed, and I think everyone knows who the RoughRiders are now. But in the beginning years, you guys were the Connecticut Oilers the first few years. Can you kind of take us through the process of how things changed and why it's benefited you so much?
Well, first of all, we're part of the RoughRiders Sports Club. The RoughRiders Sports Club is owned by Tony Sadeo. He is also the owner of the USHL team in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And then we have a facility out in Colorado, which houses our 18 and under players. But when we had the Oilers in the beginning, it was still a RoughRiders brand with the same logoing and the same marketing arm. But we had used the Oilers because there was a team called the Home Oilers that played out of Norwalk, a semi-pro team back in the 50s and 60s. So that's where they use that in from the history standpoint. And then as the program started to grow and the Oilers quickly started to gain recognition from our youth teams, like our 16s and 18s, at that point here in Connecticut, we thought it was more beneficial for the RoughRiders group to transition that name and start using RoughRiders across the board. And so the RoughRiders arm is very strong. A lot of people don't know this, but the RoughRiders also do a variety of other sports like lacrosse, basketball, and even product facility.
And Eric, we'll shift to you for this next question. I've brought it up a few times with the Team of the Week features this offseason because what I've noticed about the answers to this question is they've all been pretty unique. For you guys this past March, obviously the way that the season ended was probably completely unpredictable when we started the year. You never could have thought that we would have had to cancel the season with 2 weeks to go before our finals. But for you guys, your season was technically over. I know that this is a kind of a tough way to bring it up, but you had lost your series against the Junior Flyers. And why I'm asking this question is because the different coaches that I've talked to, for example, Bill Zanaboni, who lost in the same round you did, said that he was happy that his team wasn't still playing because he wouldn't have known how to handle not having that closure. Did you guys feel the same way having that closure, or would you have still, obviously preferred to have won that series and still been playing?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my prayers and heart goes out to Jerry with his son passing there. It was a crazy series, Jerry wasn't there, and they put a coach in that didn't even know the lineup. So it was nuts. And we played very well that first game. We're rolling on all cylinders, and you could see our team pulled together, and I think they really did play for Jerry. That was a different team than I've seen in the regular season in that first game. So they played with a lot of passion. I think they played for Jerry those 2 games. But I was proud of our team. They developed throughout the year, and it was unfortunate to end it like that.
So let's put you guys on the spot then. Say you do get through that playoff series and then the season gets canceled the way it did. How would you handle the meeting to pass the message to your players that unfortunately it was over before you could see any sort of finish line?
I mean, I think it's like life. Things come up, things that are not expected, and I think it's a learning lesson for these players. Life's not going to go as you want it, and take it in a positive manner, because I mean, literally the world hasn't seen anything like this COVID. So everyone's adapting and trying to look at the positive side of it all.
And we're obviously closer to the start of next season, obviously, than the ending of this past season. Steven, this season ends. You lose that tough series with the Junior Flyers, who Eric mentioned were just purely motivated by the passing of Jerry Domich's son. It was pretty inspiring what they did. We've talked in the past in the off season about how we always need time to decompress and close things out. How quickly did you turn the page and start, having the exit interviews and then beginning the recruiting for this upcoming year?
Yeah, so we finished on I think it was a Monday. Tuesday. Wednesday, I think it was. Whatever the next day was, we were back in the building. We did exit. The COVID NHL cancellation was Thursday. The EHL was at 5 p.m. that afternoon. So I think the NHL announced at noon. So we were already done, and players were already on the way. Our European players, we told them to get on planes. So the last flights out of the States were on Friday. So our Finnish player and our Latvian player were already gone by Friday. So we were already in that process. And then headed down to the rink. That's sort of the last time I had seen Eric, just quickly, and took literally cleared my desk out and went home and started in the turret and just starting recruiting, because we knew at that point that if we could get a jump on everyone, since some leagues were still going on just for a little bit, and before people were awake, we could take a quick step. So we were already starting on next season, calling CCM and getting in our orders. I had the time to do that.
And now let's continue to find that positive silver lining behind all this as we look ahead to the 8th season. There's no betting when it comes to the EHL, but one bet with the RoughRiders is your consistency. When you look back over the 7 years, we start with the win totals: 26, 31, 28, 17, 31, 22, 28. Then you go to the commitments: 12, 13, 12, 13, 12, 7, 9. You could pencil in 25 wins, 10 commitments every year. Steven, we'll start with you. What do you credit that consistency to?
When we bring players into the building, our objective is to developmentally make them ready for the next process, the next step, which is college hockey. So that player could be a young player where they have 3 or 4 years of junior left, 2 years, or even that player that's just coming for just 1 year of juniors. And during that process, it's important that they start learning the basics. Again, we have to evaluate their game, where we've been recruiting them, and we have to improve those, because when they get to university, they're working more in the tactical environment about who they're playing at, rather than small nuances of skills. So, as I alluded to before, Eric is, one of the best skating instructors on this planet, and they have that nugget in the building every day, from the skill set to start working on what their deficiencies are. And then we start to overlay that from the technical work to obviously the more tactical work. But at the end of the day, only one team can win a championship every season. So there are going to be 18 teams in the EHL, for example, that will not win a championship. So what is the end goal? The end goal is getting the player to NCAA hockey, which the EHL has done a tremendous job, the best feeder for that in the country right now, as far as placement, especially in NCAA Division III. Of course, we have guys going to D1 as well. But when the season ends, so if we get eliminated, whenever we get eliminated, or going through and winning a championship, that's secondary. So when a player comes up to our office in the morning during the season and says, hey, coaches, I want to tell you that I'm committed to X university here. Thank you so much for all your help. For us, that's a championship win. And that's the most rewarding part for us. And through the process as well, we also take care of our players through college. They'll come back and practice with us when they can, especially in the beginning of the season, maybe in the spring or the summer as well. And then there are some players that have aspirations of moving on to pro hockey, and we do help them move on to that next level, whether it's in the United States, in Canada, or in Europe. So as I said, the development of the athlete is the most important. The balanced roster is important, that you are making sure that you're always having players coming through and staying with you a number of years, not just in and out for 1 year.
And off of that, Eric, Brownie mentioned, your championships are when the kids come up to the office and let you know that they've officially made their commitment. For you guys, I don't have the full breakdown right here in front of me, but your average of 10 commits per year is to a variety of different schools. It's not all to the same SUNYAC or CCC program. You guys send players to all different universities and colleges across the country. What do you credit that variety to?
I would credit the variety to what the player's looking for and where they're coming from, and then also a huge part to EHL. The games that we're playing. A lot of schools are looking at those players. So it's the fit of the schools, and obviously it's the relationships Brownie has and that I have to the colleges. I mean, it's not all Division III either. Like I remember we've had some Division I guys where I really felt they're Division I player, and I made those calls to Division I schools. And there was I have one defenseman in mind. There's 15 Division I coaches at a game to look at them, and then, even going back to like Alex Wilkinson, that was the captain at Army and defenseman of the year, sophomore year in the Atlantic League, just that relationship of him getting there. He wanted to go to Army. I knew the coaches very well, and I thought he'd be an asset to the team. And they went out of their way. They took him and they actually cut another defenseman. So I think it's just, coaches trusting you. It's the same when we get a recruit. If my buddy recommends a player and that player turns out to be good in character, we're big on character players, and I'll trust him again. If he sends me a kid that's not very doesn't work out well, I won't go back to that guy. So it's the same with the colleges. They have to trust you, and a lot of our players that go on end up being captains and, making a very big impact at these schools. So that's where we get a lot of repeat, and that's where other schools want to take players also. And we also, if we have a young player, I've moved players on to the BCHL that all went on to Division I. Nick Germain, who was a captain at Quinnipiac, and then we got Paul McAvoy that's going to be at Colgate. He's one of the leading goal scorers this past year. And, and we're always in touch. They come back during the summers and spring, and we have a handful of guys doing very well at the pro level, like Nick DeSimone that played for us. He should get a shot with the San Jose Sharks this year, and there's a bunch of guys overseas. So I think it's just the credit, that we're big, like Brownie said, on developing skaters and the skill set, and I just think that's where the game's going, and that's why our players are doing so well at the collegiate level.
And I think that's a great transition that you started to mention some of the names, because for this last question, I've asked it all summer long to our Team of the Week features, and for them, you could maybe say it was a little bit easier because they don't have as many years of a track record to go off of. So, which is different from you guys. As we've mentioned a few times in this podcast, you're one of only 6 organizations that's been in the league since its inception back in 2013, and you guys being the only 2 coaches that have been in the league that entire time. So the way I frame this question is, we go to the 2021 Frozen Finals, and you're about to start your first game, and going back to 2013, you can have any Rough Rider that you want on the ice. So if you two want to work on this together, who would be your 3 forwards, your 2 defensemen, and your 1 goaltender that you would send out there for that starting lineup?
I intentionally did not talk to Brownie about this because I want to I want to feed off him. We'll probably on the same page of players, but Brownie, why don't you start off and then I'll pick the next one and so forth.
Well, you want to do the forwards? We'll do forwards. I mean, definitely Walker Harris has to be up there.
Yeah, he's my number one too.
Yeah, he's definitely on that front as far as a top player. We also have Nick Germain.
And I don't want to interrupt that. I think Walker Harris is going to get an AHL tryout. I'm not trying to jinx it, but I think he's going to get an AHL tryout this year.
So we definitely have him, and then obviously Nick Germain would be another forward that was definitely in our top group of players. And those two are pretty big standouts. We've had a variety of other forwards that have been impactful. Lucas Baumier-Day, who's currently playing in the SPHL and has had some stints in the EC as well. And I'm just trying to think of. You got any more guys?
I did not have Nick Germain in my top three, but even though I coached him since he's 7 years old. But I had Lucas, and then I had.
What was that last one you cut out there for a second? What was that third forward?
Oh, I had a tie between Joey Whitmore and Todd Jackson for a third spot.
Okay.
That's good.
And then, and then on defense, Alex Wilkinson. And then secondly, I had Danny McMillan.
McMullen. Yeah, that's what I would have said.
Yeah,
too.
McMullen. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then obviously Tilford takes net.
Yep.
That was the one that I was pretty convinced you guys were going to be set on with Tilford and net, and then obviously some of those other names there. Walker Harris just helped Wesleyan win the NESCAC this past year. Unfortunately, with the way the season ended, they didn't get to even play in the NCAA tournament. But in the NCAA tournament, I always reference what Todd Jackson did. He spent 3 years with you guys, and then as a freshman, maybe he could have gone and been a fourth or third line Division I guy, but as a freshman, he scores the game-winning goal in the national championship game for Norwich. You just mentioned Nick Germain, a captain at Quinnipiac, Alex Wilkinson, Michael Tilford. You guys have had such a great, tremendous history and so many good players that have come through there. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it seems like every year you can pencil in the RoughRiders for at least 25 wins and at least 10 commitments. One of the organizations that's built off of this consistency and is really probably the most consistent of all the teams in the league. So I'm looking forward to watching you guys again this year, seeing what new players you bring in, because I'm sure there's going to be some. Maybe there's another AJ Bella, 40-goal scorer, coming into your lineup here soon. But I wish you the best of luck with the rest of the offseason and this upcoming year as well. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, Neil, and you do a great job at the AHL. And since you've come on, the EHL's really hit the wheel and is flying. And just keep up the work you're doing. Tremendous job.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough, Neil, for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.